My name is Stephen Tyler, and I am Associate Principal at Howard Stein Hudson. I've been working with municipalities for over 30 years, and it's a combination of consulting engineering experience as well as DPW director experience in the town of Spencer. We met with the town of Hamden and East Longmeadow, looked at many of their infrastructure in the field. Things that I saw were things that I've seen traditionally in the past. Some structures you are able to get to and maintain, but you're not able to give a full maintenance attention to them all the time. And then some structures just get neglected for reasons that they're remote or off-road or just not aware of an issue or a potential issue there. And from that, we drill down into which projects were of the highest priority with respect to roadways and services they provided. And Hamden, the Main Street Bridge, was continually at the top. What we came up with was a capital improvement program for their top 10 priorities, where they could address structures on a one at a time or two at a time basis. As part of the MVP grant process, they also are encouraging communities to look at long-term solutions. So not only to replace the bridge, but what other things can occur within the community to improve the resiliency at the bridge. And so that's why we looked at these other nature-based solutions, not only adjacent to the bridge, but also further up within the watershed.
My name is Chris Lyman. I've been with the town of Hamden and the team at HSH doing all the culvert inspections and all the bridge inspections. Today we're going to go look at some of these green infrastructure locations that we found to be on their top 10 list. We're going to look at things such as, wide open areas that we can put green infrastructure that's within public land, whether it's a bioretention swale, whether it's a retention area, or whether it's just a swale that brings the water to the river, but at least treats it and absorbs some of it before it reaches the river.
We're here today at Glendale Road, Ridge Road. This culvert is 2 on our priority list.
Can look at a lot of cracking down the face.
Yeah, and then when this did wash out, you see the patch there.
Yep.
This is an older culvert. Takes a lot of water off all these mountains here. Off the 2 mountains up there form a ridge, and it comes down, carries all the water, East Brook, all the way down to Main Street. We have had some issues here before, so generally if we're expecting a large rainstorm or any kind of major thaw, this is one of the locations where we'll come and make sure there's no debris in the inlet or under the road that could cause a dam and back water up. I think it was 2019, February. We had a lot of snow on the ground and we had a rainstorm and heavy thaw. And this was the location that I saw was underwater. Right over here in the low spot was a couple inches underwater, the road. The other issue we have downstream between here and Main Street is several beaver dams. A few years back, we discovered 7 enormous dams right in the back here that were holding up water, so pretty concerning. The other thing is there's a proposed project for up the road, upstream, a solar project where they may be clearing some land, and thinking that could most certainly contribute to water runoff to East Brook making its way through this culvert. So I think that's one of the reasons why this is a good candidate for an upgrade, maybe upsize. And then also with the green infrastructure, I think we had talked about over here on this bank to kind of capture some of that water. Yeah, this is one of our top spots.
Yeah, so I think when we talked to the town about this being one of the top spots, also a spot that had historical flooding that had been seen by a lot of the residents here in town. One of the things is that it is pretty small for the brook that it's carrying, especially if you look down here. You see a lot of deposits of sediment, which is telling you that there's a lot of water actually carrying through this location, probably multiple times a year, and a lot of that sediment's getting deposited downstream. The existing bank full width at this location right now is 17.8 feet. The bank full width is basically the natural channel that the brook wants to be in. So when you're looking at the culvert face, you can see the edge of each line of the water on the wing wall. That's your bank full width. When you're looking at the Glendale channel, you can see it's very undersized. It's only 9.5 feet wide, and it's being pinched into this culvert structure. We propose to upsize this culvert to 11 feet and then also add 2 feet to the existing height of the existing culvert to allow for more water to pass underneath this and drastically improve the flow of water through the culvert during high storm events. The stream itself is very incised, so it's very, if you look at the banks coming up to it, it's very down in its channel. It talks about the health of the brook or stream itself in a location. If it's very incised, it means you're getting those high velocities, deep waters, which cause a lot of that erosive damage. Another thing about this one too is that it tends to bend back on itself. If you kind of look at the way the brook itself kind of comes back and forth, which potentially has a way of causing more flooding. There's a smaller pipe just downstream that connects basically the other side of the road to this side of the road. And the whole point of that is because I think at some point when it bends back to the road, this hydraulic connection is trying to make a connection up there also just because of how flat it is down here. So allowing the amount of water that needs to brush through so it doesn't get stuck upstream when you get large debris coming through during flooding is huge, because when that happens, you kind of get the situation where the stream or brook will try to find another way around that block, and so it's finding it downstream more and basically jumping across the road. So this is a location where if we can open it up, make it a little bit wider than the bank already is, it allows for that debris to flow through. And it's also a location that's upstream from the Main Street Bridge, which is another location we've talked about. So it's just basically going along East Brook. If you're making one fix downstream, you want to kind of carry it upstream too, because each one of these can kind of act like a roadblock for the brook itself. So if you're opening it up here and not opening it up down there, you're just putting the problem somewhere else. When it comes to like the green infrastructure at this location, there was a lot of somewhat of useful land in this location, and there's already integrated drainage infrastructure we can use to integrate with green infrastructure, so they work kind of hand in hand. Especially down this hill here on Glendale Road, it's a lot of water runoff, a lot of it's country drainage, what we call. And there's already some swales that have been installed by the DPW to try to help with a lot of that water flow to your drainage infrastructure. So what we'd be looking is to put in bioswales where it actually will infiltrate that water into the ground, and if not, it'll treat the water before it makes it to the drainage structure. It's an easy way where if you have a lot of country drainage in a town, making these bioswales potentially could be a more cost-effective way of treating water and infiltrating water instead of just putting it into a catch basin and then moving it downstream.
We are now at Smiling Pool constructed wetland at Laughing Brook. And this little pond is tucked into a sharp bend in the brook, and it is occupying a spot in the East Brook floodplain. There's a small inlet structure that puts water into the pond, and then at the outlet side, there's another concrete weir with some flash boards that back up the water by 5 or 6 feet. The town approached Mass Audubon asking the question of, well, where can we find some flood storage capacity along East Brook? This, to me, is an opportunity for increasing flood storage capacity. Smiling Pool was not always a pond. It was created around 1970 by Mass Audubon as a wildlife feature. But with increased flood events and severe storms and beaver activity and so forth, the pond has actually been somewhat of a liability for our sanctuary operation. In the mid-2000s, I don't remember the precise year, there was a major storm event that hit Hamden. At that time, Mass Audubon had several bridges over East Brook. Those bridges essentially collected debris as it was washing down the brook, and it short-circuited the brook. It just came blasting through the pond. That resulting flood scoured a 4-foot deep, 8-foot wide channel, essentially a new brook channel, through the parking lot of the sanctuary. So that was sort of the start of problems here for us. In the 60s and previously, this was a wetland. And to me, it would make sense to return this to wetland to allow it to be more of a natural part of the floodplain.
We're at a location right now, basically between Main Street and the parking lot of Laughing Brook Sanctuary. In this area, we're kind of looking to see how we can get green infrastructure involved. Back in the day, they had to make this berm here to basically protect the Mass Audubon parking lot from the roadway runoff they're already getting from Main Street. With this berm, they had to install catch basins along Main Street. That water basically is not being treated. It's going right in East Brook, upstream of the bridge. What we're proposing to do is to redirect each one of those sets of catch basins back into this location. So a lot of the runoff that will be treated and infiltrated will actually be from all the paved surfaces on Scantic and Glendale Road. You know, oil runoff, any salt runoff, hopefully can be treated here through plant species along with retention, and then anything left over will be redirected as treated water in a way back to East Brook. One challenging part of this location is how high the groundwater table is at this location. If you look around, you'll see puddles in this area. We had a storm about a day ago, so it's hard to get infiltration in this area because the groundwater table is so close to the surface. But it is a good location where we potentially could at least have some sort of water storage here and then have it released at a later time into East Brook after a major storm. When talking with the town, there was concerns, they want to make sure this isn't standing water though, where there's a place for mosquito breeding grounds. We want to make sure that the water that is placed here will be either infiltrated or evaporated within 24 to 48 hours of it entering the system. So basically it's a place that'll be wet right after a rainstorm, but a few days after a rainstorm, it should be somewhat dry down here again.
So here, shown on my screen, I have the final design of the green infrastructure at Laughing Brook. I'm kind of going to walk you through how the water kind of makes its way through this green infrastructure. It first starts traveling down Glendale Road. It'll enter this catch basin structure here, which then diverts the water through a pipe into a sediment forebay. And sediment forebay basically is just meant to get any contaminants out of the water, like silt, salt, and move it on to the system. From there, it'll flow down a rock area, which then enters a retention area. Again, the retention area is really meant to infiltrate the water, and any water that isn't infiltrated will then enter this catch basin here and go back into the main drainage system out into East Brook at the Main Street Bridge. Any water that does flow over this will be redirected through. We have a overflow spillway here. That water will make its way either back into the street and enter the drainage system, or it'll flow back down here to catch basins that are farther down the line, which also go back into East Brook. Now, when looking at this, I just want you to kind of think of a lot of grasses, some trees, some shrubs. That's basically what will be planted along here. So really the banks of the retention area is just going to be grass. The maintenance of it is going to be mowing, probably seasonally, to keep the site view from Glendale Road clear. In the middle here is where you have a lot of more of your wetland plantings. There might be some trees, some shrubs, some wetland seed plantings and grasses. We really want to make sure that the plantings we put in there have a chance to grow and aren't choked out by the invasive species. So one maintenance part of this in the early years will be probably seasonal weeding to make sure any invasives that fall into this retention area don't take over the wetland plantings that we've put there.
One of the big problems with green infrastructure, especially in smaller towns, is the maintenance. So we've talked with the Garden Center, we've also talked with Laughing Brook to find a way that we can have the community come here and bring back that old history of it being like a learning center for the community and try to have that being a learning center again. So I think it's a great opportunity for the community to come and see how different parts of green infrastructure are used so they can maybe potentially use smaller options on their own properties. This structure is not in bad shape.
It's not. Is this whole buildup sediment from that?
Probably, yeah. You just have your natural bench here,
Yeah.
which is normal, but I think some of the sediment, also you have this turn in the here, so when it floods, it's gonna deposit a lot on the outside, which is probably what this is.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that pipe is all of that neighborhood right there.
Yeah.
When that thing's fully flowing during big storms, you're not gonna treat any water or infiltrate anything when a pipe of that size is full flowing.
Mm-hmm. It'll just wash anything we put
Correct.
away.
Yep, pretty much. You'll end up with something like this, where you can see where it's just down to straight rock.
Yeah.
Just from looking up here, and I've been under this structure from doing inspections, like you can see the erosion happening against the wing wall. It's fine now, but if that erosion happens over time, especially this being such a bigger drainage structure, it's probably a 24-inch pipe at least, you're gonna start having problems where you're gonna be undermining the wing walls, which then undermines the foundation of the bridge. And then you have a situation where like a small maintenance thing that might cost, a couple $1,000s all of a sudden leads into having to shore up a foundation or an abutment, which that's a much larger fix. So doing some preventative maintenance, I guess, potentially with some green infrastructure involved in it of, either redirecting this pipe away for where the runoff isn't coming right down the wing wall. That could be, extending a little bit further and then giving it like a channel to get to the Scantic River. Finding a way to, I don't want to say rip-wrap more of this wing wall. So you're stopping the spalling around the corner here on this wing wall. But again, we still have to try to work within the boundaries of what the public way is too, which makes this site a little complicated, but there's definitely options for it.
My name is Taylor O'Neill, and I'm a community engagement specialist here at Howard Stein Hudson. So the MVP project is owned by Hampton, and so we wanted the project to be shaped by Hampton and the residents that live there. We want to make sure that we communicate with them, let them know what's going on, but then also ask them for their feedback to sort of incorporate back into the project. As part of this project, we made a website which was kind of this repository for everything that we were creating for the project. So that was reports, it was maps, presentations, designs, everything was there, and we wanted to make it, accessible to the people of Hampton. Down here is the Green Infrastructure Solutions part of the project. In here, you'll see the designs that were put together specifically for Hampton to work with a new culvert under Main Street. It's all there for anyone to look at and to use in the future if they want to. It's resources that are there for the town to sort of carry out this vision after the project's over, and it's there for any resident to learn about and then to use for themselves in their own yard or in their own classroom.
Throughout the MVP process and the multiple projects over the last few years, we've really enjoyed working with the community of Hampden, their select board, their town administrator, their highway foreman. And one thing certainly to add is the Mass Audubon. They've been a great neighbor to the project, and I know from a town's perspective, when you're doing a project like this, you're obviously working next to abutters and other landowners. They've been so involved and proactive. Seeing them being able to take advantage of this opportunity, to be able to develop a design and replace a key piece of infrastructure, that's been enjoyable as well. What I'll look forward to is seeing the construction funded and ultimately seeing the bridge built.
It's a busy road.
Yeah, it is. And they fly now that we paved it.
Plus, watching some of the cars come by.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
They did this in 2 days. Milled it and paved it in 2 days.
really?
Yeah.
The whole
Crazy.
length?
The whole length. The other thing I would want to say about the green infrastructure systems, I understand the concept and I'd like to see something like that happen. It's just I may have an issue with having town resources potentially being on what could be private property, maintaining a garden. There's volunteer groups, garden clubs, residents that might be more experienced and willing to volunteer or help out. So yeah, it'd be a good thing for, school trips. Maybe not here on this busy road, but certainly, maybe over at the last location, but just something to look at and get educated.